Well, we're rounding out June with some changes on the way for July. In fact, the National Hurricane Center, looking at this area here, Tropical Depression 2 right now in the Bay of Campeche, expected to move toward mainland Mexico here. So not a threat to the lower 48. Going to bring some heavy rain here. However, I think you got to watch this area heading into next weekend. We're going to look at that in the models today. Everything is not coming together. In fact, I just think it's such a far-fetched stretch at this point. You're going to have an old frontal boundary. There are a few things there, and I'll show you the different models, and I'll show you why you can't just look at one run. Here's the upper level chart. We're going to take this in. We're going to look a little bit at the long range to start this video, and then we're going to jump into some of the more detailed weather for your Sunday. We've got this trough that's swinging through the upper Midwest and the northern plains. That's going to continue to bring some cooler weather, also some drier weather for places like the Great Lakes into Michigan, all the way into the Northeast eventually. Across the Southwest, you've got this upper low across really the California coast. On the east side of that, the monsoon is in full effect. In fact, check this out. This is a really cool graphic, I think, from the National Weather Service out of Flagstaff. Really doing a good job of showing how as we move through the week, this would be now heading into Monday night, Tuesday night, now into Wednesday, rain chances going up across Arizona. You're talking about 44% chance of rain in Flagstaff. So, you compare that with now, very little rain. So the mountains are likely going to see some showers across the Southwest as our weather pattern starts to shift up a little bit and the monsoon officially kicks off. All right, as we head through the rest of the week, by Wednesday and Thursday, we've got this ridge across the northern plains moving east, some hot weather underneath this. And then I think, again, you watch this front. We're going to have one drop to the south near Florida. Does something happen along this front? I'm not sold just yet whatsoever, but I think it's worth at least keeping an eye on. Let's look at the operational run of the GFS because it just goes bananas with something forming right around Tampa and then moving back northwest along the Gulf Coast heading into the first part of the week. This was the 12Z run. The 18Z run says we got a hurricane coming. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible model. The European has nothing showing up, but there's your fantasy hurricane moving right up toward New Orleans. I just don't think that's going to happen, but, and here's why, too. Look at this. This is the GEFS ensembles. You got one panel here showing that tropical system out of all of the different variable options. There's just not enough agreement yet to really get sold on that. One thing I do agree with, look at these dew points. Gross. Still in the 70s as we head into Sunday across parts of Wisconsin down into, look at this, into parts of Iowa, Missouri, mid-70 dew points. Oh, man, that's moisture you can wear. And there are some changes on the way. Look at these dew points dropping back into the 60s. So anything under 70, to me anyway, you start to be a little bit more tolerable. You can feel it if it's over 60, but you can see dew points dropping back into the 60s all the way down toward Indianapolis. So a little bit of relief on the way with the humidity and the way it feels. However, across the Central Plains, it's going to dry out a little bit across North Dakota, South Dakota, down into Nebraska, dew points dropping into the 50s and 60s, even into Iowa. But look what happens as that upper low moves closer to the far southwest. We start to pump that moisture north. Boom, there it goes, and you're back up into the 70s with dew points from Minnesota back toward the Dakotas, even down into Nebraska, Oklahoma. We're back into the 70s here. But some drier air tries to move into Texas, but that moisture picks back up, though, by Thursday and Friday, and it sticks around, too. Your severe weather on Sunday, the highest risk from the Great Lakes all the way back into the Plains states. We've got a front here that's sort of draped out, so there'll be some damaging winds. That's the main threat for storms, and then heading into Monday, that pushes a little bit further to the east. Certainly not a huge severe weather outbreak expected, but some strong storms pulsing up heading into Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, especially here in southeast parts of Minnesota into Iowa. Some of these could get really strong, some damaging winds, hail with these. An isolated tornado I don't think can be completely ruled out all the way back into parts of Nebraska, and then these move south and start to weaken some, and with a weaker round of showers and storms as we head into Monday. Here's a look at your temperatures. High temperatures heading into tomorrow. They do warm up, though. Look at this. By Wednesday and Thursday, we're back into the 90s across Nebraska. Further to the south we go. Looking at the future radar heading into Sunday, the strongest storms again up in Nebraska. A few storms popping across Oklahoma and Kansas into the afternoon and evening. Some of these could get pretty tall, too, with some hail, some damaging winds with these. An isolated tornado. The biggest threat, though, would be if you look at how these are clustering up, it's just you're going to get those downbursts and those really strong winds. All right, then things really start to calm down heading into Monday. Things push off to the south and east. They calm down at least across Kansas and a good part of Oklahoma. Now our frontal boundary drops into Texas. So Dallas, the clouds, the wet weather will be around. And here's a look at your temperatures heading into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. No relief here. We're in the 90s across the southern plains for a good chunk of this week. Let's go toward the Great Lakes. We'll continue to work our way across the country. Showers and storms on Sunday moving toward Wisconsin. They'll be weakening overnight once we get into the late night hours. So from Milwaukee up to Green Bay, a lot of the severe weather by this point pretty much over. All right, so you could see a few lingering stronger storms back into Missouri. Some of these will likely hold some strength too. And then heading into Monday, everything drops off to the south and east. Look at these storms exploding here across the Ohio Valley, from Ohio into Pennsylvania, down into West Virginia. Some heavy rain possible, some gusty winds. Not a major severe weather outbreak, but definitely some stronger storms possible. And here's a look at those temperatures on Sunday. I'm going to let this go out in time because as we head now into Monday, a little bit cooler up towards Wisconsin. Look how cold Lake Superior is. And the influence we're having here with this too, especially into the UP of Michigan, right along the lake at night, dropping, I think, down into the 50s on the Canadian side, easily in the 50s, maybe even close into the 40s. But as we head now into Tuesday, that cooler and drier air tries to push a little bit further to the south, knocking your highs back some. So instead of the 90s, you're looking at highs close, well, into the 80s for some areas. Places into Michigan, especially up towards Gaylord, you may not get out of the 70s here. So definitely a cooler time ahead. To the south we go, and then we'll move back into the northeast. Showers and storms as we head into Sunday afternoon from Mississippi, so Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, back to Starkville, Tupelo. We've got showers and storms around. They'll be around too across North Georgia into the upstate of South Carolina, Greenville, Spartanburg, north up towards Charlotte, a few storms, and then along the west coast of Florida, some good convergence here with showers and storms through the evening hours settling down overnight. And then more rain showers from Nashville to Jackson as we head into Monday morning along this frontal boundary and these outflow boundaries from the storms the day before. And more storms on Tuesday. I'm telling you, with all of that humidity, I mean, I showed you the dew points well into the 70s and 60s as we head through, look at this, Sunday, also into Monday. Plenty of moisture to work with, and we're going to keep this weather pattern around for a while. Okay, high temperatures, or at least a look at the temperatures moving through the day on Sunday, starting off relatively sticky and then warming up well into the 90s across the coastal plain of North Carolina, South Carolina, down into Georgia, Brunswick, well into the 90s, at least into the low 90s, I think, and then down into Florida, typically hot. You got to get up into the mountains here. Get above 2,500 feet, maybe 3,000 feet. You may be lucky enough to get into the 80s from the high country of North Carolina up into Virginia and West Virginia. Otherwise, if you can get some clouds across the Tennessee Valley, that's going to be your saving grace and keeping you cool. But here comes some cooler weather, at least heading into Monday. The further north you go, that front's going to have a hard time working very far to the south. Eventually, it will push closer to the Gulf Coast. It's not going to, again, be a huge severe weather maker by any stretch. All right, let's continue to move now into the northeast as we look around the country today. And if you're just joining us, you can back the video up, take it from the very beginning. Rain showers moving to the east on Sunday morning through parts of Maine as our front drops off to the east. A little bit quieter here than what we saw on Saturday. From Maine back into southern New England, relatively dry. Few storms, though, heading into Monday afternoon once you get down here towards Philadelphia. Maybe even back as far west as Harrisburg, and then down toward Baltimore, D.C., over to Dover, then towards the Jersey Shore, some storms. But once you get here from New York into southern New England, the strongest storms to the south here, relatively dry, but here comes our next batch of rain moving toward Rochester, Buffalo, Pittsburgh. We're back into the rain as we move into Tuesday, at least with that round. And here's a look at your temperatures through the day on Sunday. A little bit cooler here, right? We're back into the 70s and 80s from really up and down the Hudson Valley, north into the Adirondacks, into the mountains here, the Catskills, Adirondacks, Green, White Mountains. We're probably going to get down into the 40s at night, I think, maybe early Monday morning. You can see some blue showing up, and then high temperatures heading into Monday. Beautiful here, 70s and 80s. The oppressive heat now releasing its grip across the northwest. Or northeast, I should say. I'm looking at the northwest now, where it's going to get hot heading into Monday and Tuesday. Let's back it up for Sunday. Not a lot of changes here. That upper high really dominating the weather. But watch the southwest as this monsoon flow starts to pick up here. You can see the showers and storms expanding, at least the chances for seeing that across the far southwest. As far north as Idaho, that moisture moving all the way north into the northern Rockies. the monsoon, at least the influence of it, starts to weaken some for places like Arizona, Utah, so our rain chances going down as we head towards Saturday and Sunday, but they continue from the Front Range and areas to the east. And there's a look at your temperatures. Baking still across the Southwest with temperatures in the triple digits heading into Sunday afternoon. Not a lot of relief at night in the deserts, maybe dropping back into the mid-80s to low 90s, and another hot one in Phoenix, 114. Even Boise pushing into the mid-90s, into parts of eastern Oregon and Washington also well into the 90s. The heat is on across the West. All right, that's a quick look at what's going on across the country. I want to move our upper level pattern a little bit further out in time. We've looked at the day-to-day forecast. Again, heading through the next couple of weeks, I think July, it's going to be typically hot. I mean, no surprises there. But one thing that I think is of note, look at this monster ridge that's trying to show up on the GFS across the Atlantic as we head towards the 11th and the 12th and the 13th. I mean, I don't know that I believe this. It's the GFS, first of all, right? But, man, you get something like this, you watch out here in the tropics. More to come on that. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.